Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I, and we are doing a coaching deep dive. So, really taking a deep dive into Andrea's client Janae's journey to stage. Janae, so really just a client case study, taking it from her starting point to several years later getting on the stage, competing for her first fit model competition. Of course, had a dramatic transformation there. But really just want to take you guys through the entire thought process, kind of where Andrea's head was at as she was coaching her. Which again, like such an impressive transformation. And I really think so similar. Her starting point was very similar to where a lot of our clients are starting. And the result she got was also very much in alignment with what most clients want. So I think it'll be such a good case study for how you might go about approaching that. But first, for listener context, Andrea, how did Janae's recent fit model show go? Well, can you explain what a fit model show even is for those who might not know?
Yeah, so Physique, it's a physique competition. It's a
Hmm.
division of the physique competition, and it's a newer division that they've just added recently, which is like how bikini started. So bikini now has gotten to the point where it's more muscular, it's way leaner, and so they added this newer division called fit model that is a little bit softer, a little bit less muscular.
Okay. And how did Janae's first show go?
Good. She got second in her class. She looked great. I think that she really fit the criteria super well and handled it really well all the way through. She was happy with it. So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, she looked incredible. You guys crushed it. Now, when she started coaching, was she close to being ready for this?
No, this wasn't even on her radar. Um, one of my other clients, competed in a bikini competition about a year and a half ago. Is that when we were at in one?
Hmm.
December. Yeah. And at that time, whenever I put up her results, Janae just commented on it and was like, I've been thinking about this. And I was like, oh, have you? But that was already a year and a half into her working with me. And this wasn't even on her radar at all when we started.
Okay, I love it. So, and again, I'll link up in the show notes. Would probably be a good visual to go along with this. Janae's transformation, the highlight post we did from like where she started to where she ended up for the Fit Model Show. I think that will be quite helpful. But today's episode is just going to be a deep dive into the training methods and phases of nutrition Andrea took her through to get her here to the best shape of her life. And it is going to be especially relevant if you are someone who is already lean but don't have the shape that you want. Like in Janae's case, also, I think it was very cool and very relevant to a lot of our clients how she built her best physique ever, not spending a whole lot of time dieting at all. Just ended up feeling so good on stage, just super lean, strong, very proud of the end result. Before
And
we get into
just
the, go ahead.
also a note there that if somebody's listening and is like, I don't really ever want to step on stage, it's not my thing. Fit model is also a very similar look to photo shoot.
For
Like
sure.
she got probably a little bit leaner than I would say most photo shoot lean people are getting, but it's kind of like that look that most people are looking for or wanting with photo shoot lean.
Even a lot of people thinking of like if I want to go on like a beach vacation or something of the sort,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is a lot more similar to like the look people aspire to there.
Yep.
Any personal updates from you this week? Anything exciting to fill us in on?
Uh, Not really exciting necessarily. My foods stayed the same for a couple weeks. There was travel in there. Um, I I'm at like 3 pounds above my photo shoot weight, which is I think I was like 2.5 last time we updated. It's kind of hovered around the same for a while. I feel all of a sudden kind of like a little bit softer, but I also got my cycle back, so I think it's really just that I actually have hormones now that are fluctuating. So like in the first
Or
half of your cycle, for anybody that doesn't know, your estrogen's a little bit higher. I'm like, oh man, my shoulders aren't quite as defined as they were before. But all good. We're not in like a bad place by any means.
okay, okay. So as a whole, it sounds like it's going pretty well.
Yeah, I'm gonna get labs here in a couple weeks, and then from there, as long as everything looks good, hopefully, then I'll start like officially building.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
I'm
me
curious to
too.
see how aggressively you guys will push up weight this time around.
Me too.
Anything else on your end?
No. What about you?
Cool. Yeah, mine's pretty similar. Not a lot to update. Let's see. We have
You got
been,
your cycle back?
yeah, I'm actually making period jokes. I'm mature. Uh, I have not gotten my cycle, but no, pretty much where we were last week. Still doing like I don't know if I think I talked through this. Basically doing like a 2 days of the week where my food intake is pretty low. 3 days where it's pretty moderate, and then a couple days where it is quite high. Then have like one attract meal there, which I was talking about this on our call with Dom earlier. I do legitimately think I've gotten a little bit leaner, which I wasn't like shredded. I don't think I was below the point that was sustainable for my photo shoot. So I feel super good. Hunger's definitely like a little bit higher at the end of the day. Like I feel really good in my training. My recovery is super good. Progression has been really nice. That's been interesting. We're also taking a really low volume approach relative to me, at least. Like it's a lot lower than anything I've done before. A lot of movements are legitimately just one set, um, which I've really liked actually. I feel like
Yeah.
you really get to like. I thought I would miss doing more than that, but it has been super fun. And I really, because you had a lot of movements that are like one set, right?
Right now I'm at 2 for everything, just kind of trying to see where we need to be with my sets.
Mhm.
But for my first build phase, there were months where a lot of my movements were only one set. All of my compounds were one.
That's what I was thinking, and like you did super well with that as well.
Yeah, I really liked it.
I don't know if this is just in my head, but I genuinely feel like I have noticed like over the like I don't feel like I look fluffier, but my physique does look just a little bit different. I almost feel it's like a little bit less like very hard to explain. It like looks like less inflamed or like a little bit less puffy, which I'm curious is just from like less muscle damage, like less inflammation. I don't know. That's just
Hmm.
a something I need to ask Kyle about actually. But I have really liked that. You can really just like okay, I have one set of hack squats. I'm going to take my time warming up, make sure I can get the most out of this set, and even going from like 2 to 1. That's the most important thing, though, is like for this to be effective, we have to really be good at training hard. But I really, I mean, I don't know, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it a lot more than I have even expected that I would. So it's been cool. But yeah, that's really pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like how long you guys are gonna. You still have 2 sets for a lot of your movements, though. I wonder how long that'll stay untouched without
Yeah,
adding
basically
anything.
like my compound movements, almost everything is one set, and then my like isolate my lateral raises, my leg curls, glute
Okay, so
bridges,
that's
things
pretty
like that are
similar
all,
to what I was
yeah.
doing.
And he said like we might toy with like on our isolation exercises, potentially adding a little bit more volume from time to time, but it'll all depend on how we're progressing. And right now, like there are a lot of new movements in my training, in part just because like so much of my gym equipment that I ordered forever ago finally got here that it's hard to distinguish like is this just neurological gains or is
Yeah.
this so that's a big part of it. All right, ready to get into Janae's case study.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with where she started. What were her goals when she first started?
She I recently looked back at her questionnaire. Um she was wanting, how she worded it was just like some daily workouts, which is funny to me because it makes me think of like that where you subscribe to an app and it'll like give you something different every day. um, that's what she was wanting, and then she wanted to learn how to track her macros and make that work into her lifestyle,
Okay.
which we definitely did, and that's really honestly been the focus. um I mean, we expanded on it a bit, which we'll talk about, but that really has been a big focus even up until she started prep. Like she's somebody that will fit in a couple drinks a week or a couple meals out. She'll travel for work and have to fit in like the catered food and things like that. So that's not something that really shifted a ton up until prep where she had to tighten it up. But the daily workouts thing was definitely different than I think what she was initially thinking about whenever she signed on. But her goals were to get leaner. And I know we'll talk about this, but once we got started, I was like, oh, you are going to do so much better if we actually start building first rather than um, leaning out.
Okay. I think that's a really good. Sometimes, like on the initial call, when someone's just curious about coaching, they haven't decided if they're going to sign up yet or not. That is something that comes up with the travel thing. But I have like this coming up, and I'm not sure if I can like follow you guys' plan because it seems like you push your clients pretty hard, and I think the important thing to understand is like we help. There isn't a specific like, hey, this is how everybody manages travel. It's let's work through for you like, hey, what makes sense here from a goals perspective, from the trade offs you are or aren't willing to make. And we'll formulate a game plan from there. And it looks a little bit different for everyone. I think that's an important takeaway. But I'm glad you mentioned as well, like she wanted fat loss. She wanted to get leaner, and she thought fat loss was a way to get there. But it sounds like y'all pivoted in a different direction.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, like, okay, were her goals. She wanted to get leaner and basically change her shape. What were the things she actually needed to get there?
She needed to build muscle. She just needed
Mm-hmm.
time repeating the same workouts and getting stronger with those and getting better at the skill of training, along with eating enough food. Because she's also somebody that moves a lot. She gets like 13,000 steps just on a regular day.
Yeah.
And she needed to eat a lot more food and spend time training and improve her training quality to get the shape, to build the shape that she wanted.
That's like a almost always people think the solution is getting leaner. But we work with a lot of clients starting in this situation. It's funny to have like especially to have the like goal physique pictures. Like we'll typically have people upload like, hey, what is the goal physique like? Just give us an idea of this. Because a lot of times it'll be like, hey, you realize that person has more body fat than you do. They just also have more muscle. But a lot of times it's still like thinking that I need to get leaner to get there. But it is very much no matter how lean we are, if we don't have the shape we want, a lot of times it is we just need to build more muscle. And it sounds like for her, that was by far the biggest thing that needed to be focused on.
Mhm.
And better training, better fueling around that.
Yeah, exactly. Which
Okay.
I can get into more if you want, but I think we're going to probably cover that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. So let's kind of then start talking through what actually changed her physique. Let's walk through the first 12 months. Kind of just give us a big picture. What phases did she go through and kind of the why? Like you're thinking behind, here's why we implemented this, here's why we implemented this.
Yeah, so when we first got started, we will typically start with what we're calling a primer phase, which is
Mm-hmm.
just an initial time frame to set up a good foundation and make sure that habits are in a good place, biofeedback's in a good place, all of that. And it basically sets you up to have a successful next phase. Well, at that time, I did not extend out primer phases as long as I do now. We
Yeah.
also didn't take pictures up front. So my first time seeing her pictures was when she checked in for the first time after the first week of the primer phase. So we went into we were already planning on a fat loss phase after the primer phase. We did the 1 week primer and went into fat loss. And so then I was seeing her pictures, and after that second week, I had a talk with her. Like, I know that you want to get leaner. I know that ultimately that's your goal, but the physique that you're describing that you want actually is going to be um, attained by adding muscle tissue. And luckily, she was receptive to that. And so we started bringing calories up fairly quickly. Like in the third week, we were going into, we called it a body recomp phase. Um, she wasn't really, we weren't in a true build yet. We were recomping at a maintenance intake at that point, and that lasted for 22 weeks. So all in all, this was 6 months in before she ever went into a deficit, but she got quite a bit leaner through that recomp phase.
What made you decide to build her at maintenance versus like putting her in a surplus then?
She didn't really need the surplus yet. And this is also me thinking with my brain now, where this is where I would go with it. I think that a large part of it at that time was also she wasn't super comfortable going into a build
Hmm.
phase yet. But even if she was, it just wasn't needed yet. And she
Yeah.
also, at that time, her training quality wasn't very good yet. And she pushes hard, but her training quality just had a lot to be improved. I believe she was only using a couple of dumbbells too at that point, with her garage gym before she expanded it. And so she just didn't need a surplus yet to be able to get the kind of gains recomp that she was wanting.
I think that's another very important point where the food, like more food doesn't equal more muscle growth. A lot of like if our training quality, not just our ability to push hard, but also the way we're actually executing the movements isn't in a good place, more food isn't going to equal more gains. It's just going to be more fat gain. So most people who like don't have haven't already built a lot of muscle if we're just like mastering training, I think like, hey, just fueling you well at the upper end of maintenance makes so much more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and dialing things into she trained fasted there for a while.
Mhm.
But we made sure that at least like the post-workout meal was fueling her for training. And at this point she does a pre-workout meal too, but um there was kind of no thought to those kind of things and splitting evenly her protein across the day. So just dialing those details in made a huge difference for her.
And she got quite a bit leaner even in this process before your first mini cut then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she
Okay.
was already like a completely different body composition at the end of that 6 months.
I remember sharing that actually. And in part, like we talked about, she just built a lot of muscle. Would you say it's primarily like she built more muscle or she lost body fat?
She definitely built muscle. I'm not remembering her exact weights, but
Mhm.
I know at least one of them that we've shared, she was 2 pounds heavier after.
Yeah.
I think that was the one. That was the
Yeah,
one.
that was the one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So she probably didn't lose much fat at, well, I don't know, because she could have built like 5 pounds of muscle and lost 3 pounds of fat, that sort of thing. But the majority of the change of her look is that she built muscle.
For sure. And that's super important to understand here as well, right? It wasn't, she was quite lean. If you guys would have pulled like 8 pounds of body fat off of her, she probably would have just felt like shit and felt skinnier. But if you guys built, you improved her shape, you improved the ratio of muscle mass to fat mass, thus her body fat still got lower and was a lot closer to the look she wanted. So from here, talk us through the rest of the year then. It sounds like you started some type of fat loss phase next.
Yeah, so for the first couple years, all she did was 2 mini cuts. And that was really just because she had spent enough time not dieting that when she had like an event that she wanted to feel a little bit tighter for or vacation, then we're like, okay, let's do a quick mini cut, get you feeling really confident, and then we'll get back to building. So we did a 5 week mini cut phase. This one was, I believe, for her sister's wedding. One was for her sister's wedding, the other one was for a vacation. Um, so just 5 weeks in a deficit. We really didn't see a huge swing in weight. It was mostly like we're gonna have a little less food in our stomach on the beach sort of thing, and then we would just get right back to building.
Okay. And she's already very lean at that point. So you
Mhm.
really didn't need to necessarily pull her down all that much more. Okay, so then what happened from there?
Then she was on board with an actual building phase. So
Okay.
at that point, she was quite a bit leaner, and we started to focus on actually adding weight on the scale because for her, she was in the place at this point where training looked pretty good. She also was training with more equipment. We had just more options for her to really push hard in her training.
Right.
Um, she was really lean, and so she's like, okay, my main focus now is building muscle, so let's do it. Let's go into a building phase. And we stayed there for 38 weeks.
Okay. So a long
And she's
stretch.
actually somebody where, man, we had to push her food so high to get the scale even budging at all. So the build phase for her was actually, it was kind of difficult to actually get things moving because like I said, she just moves a lot, and when we started feeding her more, she would move more, and we would try and cap her steps, and it like a typical like hard gainers type of issue.
It's super common though for like this specific type of client who comes in and it's like, dude, being lean, fat loss isn't a problem for you. But it typically is that same person where I don't have the shape I want because building muscle
Yeah.
is more difficult and it's oftentimes a recovery issue, right? It's hard for us to fuel ourselves well enough. It's hard for us to recover the way that we want to. And that comes from that, like, hey, if we ramp up food, we also just tend to ramp up movement. Do you think for her, she is someone who, like, without you guiding her through this process, would have had a very hard time fueling herself well enough to make the gains that she's had?
For sure. Yes. Because we had to do quite a bit of like retooling her food sources and she would get pretty full. She was scared to pull back vegetables and scared to include things like Gatorade because of the sugar, that sort of thing. So just
Hmm.
being able to educate her through that and um, like reassure her that she wasn't going to become less healthy with 5 servings of vegetables across the day rather than 6 sort of thing where
Yeah.
or like pivoting on the types of veggies she was including. So, okay, here instead of broccoli, do you like zucchini? Do you like bell peppers? These things that are less bloating and filling. Um the kind of person that just kind of naturally gravitates toward high fiber, whole food, very filling items sometimes have a little mental hurdle to pull those sort of things back. I was definitely that exact same way. And that was one of the things that we had to work through quite a bit. And each increase in food, it was more so.
But that can definitely be a big obstacle. So, sounds like about a year in, we've spent 22 weeks. Basically, a year in, we've spent 5 weeks in fat loss. Her physique has changed 5 to 7 weeks in fat loss. Her physique has changed tremendously. She looks leaner. She's a lot more jacked. But almost all that time has been spent building. What do you think in this first year? Like, what changes made the biggest difference in her results? Be that training, nutrition, mindset, lifestyle, like anything stand out there?
The two biggest things I would say were training quality and switching that mindset to fueling with enough food.
With
Her
the
training
training quality,
quality
go ahead.
her training quality came such a long way. Like I said, she always pushed hard.
Hmm.
But she has, and this is still something that we're working to improve because I don't think this is ever like a complete journey for anybody. We're working, or we did and are working through like how can we maximally engage this muscle and how can we set up to make sure that the target muscle is the thing that's failing here,
Hmm.
rather than letting the hips shift or getting your shoulder too involved in a pull. Those sort of things are always a work in progress with everybody, myself included. But that had come such a long way during that
Yeah.
time too that that was one of the big things.
How did you fix that? Was that just like video review or talk me through how you guys were addressing that?
Yeah, lots of video review and lots of just intentional cueing and setting up her um like tweaking her setup to put her in a position for success in different movements, like elevating her front foot on a split squat, for example, is something that helps keep her pelvis a little bit more neutral. Um, in a hip thrust, cueing her with like keeping her ribs down rather than letting her ribs flare up once she starts to get fatigued, like those sort of things. And it's just like let's look at a video, let's tweak this a bit. That's better. Let's look at that video again. Now we can correct this a little bit and just sort of like bringing up the weak points one by one until we have a much improved execution.
And that's one of the most important things. I think one of the most, we talk about this a lot, but how important the training is. I think people like when they start coaching oftentimes think it's like just about nutrition where the training is just status or oftentimes like for getting the result you want more important because a lot of people know how to diet and like know how to manage their nutrition fairly well. There's a lot of stuff we can do with like calorie cycling, refeeds, peri-workout nutrition as well. But like people don't understand just how important the training is and also how much we can and need to make this specific to the person, right? When we're talking about better training quality, like for me to like set up my split squat, if I'm trying to like compete, fit model, and build my glutes, like how I set that up might be completely different than how you would need to set that up for Janae. So much of like helping someone get the most out of their training is looking at, okay, like what's our anatomy like? What are our limb links like? What's the machine we're working with like? And here's for this person how we put them in the best position. That's such a big part of it. Um, Major obstacles you guys encountered during this time. Does anything stand out there this first year?
Um, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but fixing her training execution was a big one. Her training intensity was always there, but almost to a detriment because she would try and kind of push the weight up before her body was able to do that with holding good positioning. Um, she also she expanded her gym quite a bit within this time, and so just getting her training dialed in with all of that, all of those things, and then as we got closer to as she decided that she wanted to compete, like then adjusting her training toward that specific physique that we were looking for.
Okay.
And then just managing things like meals out and alcohol. She does a really good job with it, but with with each different goal, it just requires a different level of managing that.
Yeah.
So she was able, like, she eats quite a bit of, like, her calories are quite high. Like I said, she just moves a lot. And so whenever she's building, for example, she has quite a bit of flexibility with that. Whereas when we would go through the mini cuts and things like that, we would have to adjust expectations there.
Okay. Okay. Spot on. So let's talk through the second half of this transformation. Similar to what we did before. Talk us through the phases she worked through and kind of the why behind each of them.
So after that 38 weeks of a building phase, she went into another mini cut, which was 8 weeks long. Um, I had a little bit more information on how her body was going to respond during this time. Um, and so that one, her scale came down a little bit more than it did in that initial shorter mini cut. Um, and this was, like I said, one of them was for vacation, one of them was for her sister's wedding. She just kind of wanted to tighten up a little bit more going into it. So it was just a super quick detour. Hey, let's get a little bit leaner, feel more comfortable going into this event. And then it was right back to building. And
Okay.
when she went into that next build phase, that was when we were planning on the show.
Okay. Okay. So quick cleanup phase. How long was that next building phase then?
That one was also 38 weeks.
Weird how
So
those
she
both
spent,
worked out to be 38 weeks.
yeah, it is weird. So she spent, um, like, what, like 3/4 of a year both times building.
Hmm. So basically, that led up to that the second 38-week lean building phase led up to then her actual fat loss prep for the fit model competition.
Mhm.
But I think one of the important takeaways here is for her. Now, this won't be the same for everyone, but someone who's already quite lean, where we primarily need to build muscle to change her physique. And again, the result she got is incredible. Basically, you guys have 13 weeks of dedicated fat loss in this entire like first couple years leading up to her prep for the fit model show. It's pretty crazy, but awesome. But again, just like how much prioritizing building, fueling well, especially if you're already quite lean but just don't have the shape you want. So often that is just what people actually need.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But that's also a testament to her handling the building phases so well. We didn't
Hmm.
gain fat uncontrollably to the point where we had to diet more frequently too.
Also a very good point. Okay. In the second year, any like major changes you guys made with training, nutrition, or other versus the first year that you felt like led to a nice continued rate of progress or no?
I did push her a little harder in that second build phase. The first build phase, we did get her food quite high, looking for just some sort of rate of gain over
Hmm.
time. In this one, knowing that she had this goal, I pushed her quite a bit more. So I increased her food a lot more than she was comfortable with, just digestively. And we did a lot of troubleshooting with that as well, of course. Um, but we increased her intra workout quite a bit, made sure that she was fueling both pre and post and intra workout. So we just got things a lot more specific, knowing that there was a very specific goal at the end of it.
But that's not just, hey, I was pushing food and she was just gaining lots of fat. She was just piling on the fat now. But it wasn't like, oh, we're dirty bulking now super hard, right? It was all still very strategic, but it was definitely, it sounds like outside of what she was comfortable with or what she would have done herself.
Yeah, and she didn't really gain much fat at all. But I did want to see the scale going up at least a couple check-ins per month. Whereas before it was like, okay, we're not losing weight. We might see it go up every once in a while. I'm okay with that. But in this build phase, because of the more specificity, I was just trying to consistently see that over time because that's what she needed in order to be sure she was building muscle.
Okay. So when and why did you guys decide for her to compete?
She had she had said on that at that time that Patricia did hers, she had said, "Oh, this is something I've kind of thought about," and then I just let her bring that up to me in her actual check-ins or the communication that we have coaching specific because that was just like an Instagram comment. I was like, "Oh, that's cool, that's interesting," but I didn't say anything else about it because I needed that to be her decision. And
Yeah,
so she said, "This is something I keep thinking about. I want to compete in bikini because at that time fit model wasn't even a thing.
right,
We originally were aiming for bikini. Um, so then whenever fit model was added, she said, "Actually, I really like the thought of this because bikini is just a little bit bigger and leaner than what she was wanting, and so fit model was
right.
perfect." Um, It was also just a way for her to it was a big, scary goal for her, and that's kinda like what she was wanting. She
I love it.
there were a couple of times where she was like, "What am I doing?" And I talked her through, like, uh, how I feel about my own, goal to compete and how it's, like, completely out of my comfort zone, but that's what I am excited by, and she was like, "Yeah,
Right.
that's how exact that's you put into words exactly how I feel about it." So I think she just wanted to get outside her comfort zone and really push for something.
I love that. Okay. So when you guys did decide to commit to, okay, we're competing, did this change your training?
Yes. Yeah. So, bikini and fit model, the size is different, but the shape is not all that different. So the training, once it pivoted from bikini to fit model, did not change. But when she decided that she wanted to compete in bikini, it got a lot more specific. So it was just sort of an evenly split volume programming up until that point. But when she
Like
decided that
split
she,
between upper and lower evenly?
yeah,
Or
just
how do
kind
you
of all
mean?
muscle groups.
Okay, got you.
But then whenever she decided to compete, we got a lot more specific with glutes and delts, basically.
Okay. Was that like ham touching on those 3, 4 times a week? What did that look like?
She actually she didn't have the 3 times per week frequency with hers because I didn't with her being somebody that is she has a hard time building muscle. I didn't want to like push her expenditure super high. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So she had a lower upper split. It was just a lot more specific.
So more so an exercise selection, like we're more biasing glutes with our lower body movements, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, but we really want to be cautious about can we actually recover from this and grow? And I would agree. I mean, like, especially with lower body, like especially if we're doing like 3 full leg days, not that many people can recover from it well. Like we really have to be cautious the way we program it. Or like for we talked about with you, like you basically did just 3 leg days, but you didn't do like any upper body training. You just like trained 3 days a week for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly. And she did still need the upper body too. Like she needed a little bit more specific programming, but she also just needed to still continue to grow across the board too.
Okay. So let's talk through then. What did her prep look like? Be it like duration, her nutrition, her cardio, her training.
So when we started, that was January, like the second week of January. And we started out with 3 20-minute sessions of cardio.
Hmm.
And something that we added in, so let me back up. She had training day, rest day, nutrition up to this point. And
Hmm.
at first, we kept her at training day, rest day, but just pulled her calories down across the board, which worked well. She started to lose. But the fourth week, I added 2 dig days, and then her training day macros became 2 high days, and then her rest day nutrition became 3 low days. And that worked really well for her because she is just really adaptive. So like I said, she had to push her food really, really high in her building phases, but then in her mini cuts, her weight would come down, but not as much as you would anticipate based
Yeah.
on pulling the food down. So those couple of dig days while keeping her other days high actually worked really well for her, which is a little bit counterintuitive because you wouldn't you would think that with somebody like that, she feels fine lowering her food because she was so full anyway. You would think just, okay, let's reduce it across the week because then she's going to feel more comfortable with the amount of food that she's eating. But because we were able to maintain those high days, she didn't adapt down quite as much, and we could just create a larger deficit across those 2 days of the week. So her dig days were like, let's see, a little bit higher than my current rest days. So her dig days weren't anything crazy at all. They were at 1740 calories. But it's enough of a deviation from her baseline that it created a large deficit.
I think it's probably important to disclaim as well. Like that's not
Not
normally where
normal.
most people's day is full. If you're like having a couple days a week where we're digging quite low and keeping food higher the rest of the week, it's not abnormal to be like if you're a smaller woman to be closer to 1,000 for those couple days per week.
Hmm.
If we're really digging, so okay, okay. But again, she is someone where like when she's maintaining, when she's building across the board, she's able to eat quite a bit more food. But I also don't think it like makes like relatively it's interesting. Like I don't know, like you're not someone who can eat a ton of food. I'm not someone who can necessarily eat a ton of food either. And I've had clients who like have to diet quite low, but like the relative suck of it doesn't seem like it changes, if that makes sense. Like the hunger, the way it impacts biofeedback, like for this person, 1,700 calories feels like what 1,300 calories feels like for this person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anything else as far as her prep? What it was 15 weeks total, right?
Um, Let me look at the exact number of weeks because hers was so she started, let's see, 8. Hers was 12 weeks.
Oh, it was 12 weeks. Okay.
No,
Okay.
you're
So
right.
12.
It was 14, but the we started bringing her food back up relatively early. So I'll talk through the rest of that. So that was the fourth week whenever we added dig days for her, and then we kept at that same intake for 3 weeks. And then at
Hmm.
that point, we lowered her dig days a bit more, and we lowered her other days across the week just a little bit more. And we held that for 4 weeks. So at that point, she was 9 weeks in, and we were, what, like 5 weeks out from her show.
Okay.
And she was leaner, a little bit leaner than she needed to be, but also very
Hmm.
flat. And with Fit Model, you don't want to be too flat. You don't want to have like tie-ins or delt caps or anything like that. And so what we did at that point was start to bring her food back up. We dropped her cardio out completely. and we dialed in her electrolytes.
Okay.
So what I was looking for is, okay, this is her baseline without any cardio and with having the same electrolytes day to day. And then from there, we started feeding her up
Okay.
so that she would fill back out because
Okay.
she was really flat, just looked a little bit like skinny, like skinnier than what she needed to be. And when we filled her back out with first carbs and then more fats, it filled her muscles back out and softened her up just a little bit. Initially, she actually got leaner from the additional carbs, but then once we started adding more fats in, it softened her up just a little bit to exactly where she needed to be. So
Okay.
we were able to
Okay.
use that last month to dial all of that in because she got ready early.
It's which is pretty cool to be ready that far in advance.
Yeah.
From a cardio perspective, how did that change? I know you said you started at 3 sessions of 20 minutes. Do you have to ramp that up at all?
We didn't change that at all, actually. She held there for the whole time that we had cardio in until we dropped it out, which is
Okay.
not typical. Again, that's not normal. Most of the time, we'll have to ramp that up. But for her, because her food was as high as it was, we were able to just play with her food rather than increasing her cardio.
Yeah, that's a blessing for sure. But again, not something that's necessarily the norm. Did you have to change training a whole lot to like manage fatigue or anything like that? Or was it able to stay pretty similar as well?
We reduced her number of working sets a little bit,
Okay.
but that's it. We didn't have to
Okay.
change it a ton up until like closer to the end.
Okay. Okay. So when you're like looking at the result that she got, anything that stood out to you about her on show day, be it like versus the other competitors, or just like, wow, we've changed so much in this area?
She looked she looked on par with all of the top competitors there, honestly. Um she felt like, which is this has been consistent with new people, like new competitors, the posing is
Hmm.
nerve-wracking. And
Yeah.
it was just like new show day stuff where she's like, I felt rushed, and I was nervous, like those sort of things. But her physique, she looked on par with the top competitors there, which is really cool. um I mean, as far as her physique and how far she's come there, I mean, that's crazy. Just she's everywhere across the board has built so much. Um, but in this last build phase, I'm really happy with how much she was able to bring her glutes up and her back. Like her back training has come so far in terms of like her ability to stay in position.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah, she definitely looked like she belonged there, and her back does look so much different across the board. Though you guys have just crushed it. Again, I'll link up her transformation in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. Um, so obviously she achieved an incredible result. From your perspective as a coach, what do you think it is Janae did really well that other people might struggle with?
She was so calm and drama free through the whole thing. Like she was just very confident. She mentioned being nervous like one time. Not that you shouldn't feel nervous or shouldn't bring those things up, but I don't think she was hiding it. I think it was just that she felt very confident through the whole thing. Um she was on top of it with hiring a posing coach. She just executed super well on following the meal plan. Um, we implemented a meal plan maybe like 10 weeks out, and
Hmm.
there was only one time, and that was very early on within those 10 weeks that she didn't follow it, and that was just on a work trip. And then from then on out, she was just on top of it the entire time. She had all of the like small details very dialed in, and I mean, it was just it felt it felt so smooth because she didn't freak out.
It's such a beautiful thing when someone is willing to just follow the plan in front of them. You just get incredible results. A lot of the like, it's easy to just create so much friction by like, what if this doesn't work for me? What if and
Yeah.
it does. But again, like when we create problems or like, so I'm gonna go back to like this thing that I did and like kind of halfway do this. that is when things don't go as well. So sounds like she was extremely consistent. She was calm. She just followed the plan, trusted in you as a coach. For other clients or potential clients listening, what would you say are the biggest takeaways from Janae's transformation if they want a similar result?
You probably need a lot more muscle than you think is probably the biggest one for her entire journey, not just the prep aspect of it, but you will probably see a much bigger visual difference if you focus on building muscle versus just trying to continually chase fat loss. And then of course, like the 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 better you manage that building phase, the less fat loss phases you need, which is great because then we can just spend more time out of a deficit building. Um, and then like the calmness, I think, is a huge aspect of it that other people can take away. Like if you're, I was talking to somebody about a weight jump that they saw this week, and she's like, I'm not worried about it. And I was like, that is a very good sign that you followed through on your diet. Because if you're freaking out about it, there's probably like a reason that you're second guessing why this weight jump would happen. But if you followed through on your diet, then we know that it's this other variable. Like it's just very clearly that thing. And when you're consistent and you're following the plan that's laid out, there's so much less to worry about.
I love it. That's a really good insight as well. I think it just as a whole, it can be so something I talk through a lot with clients is like we just don't need to put so much stress, so much pressure on this. Like your body, we've seen your body respond so far. Like we already have proof that your body is responsive and this will work because it already has. So we don't need to be in this constant state of fear of like, what if this doesn't work for me? Or just execute, trust the plan, it'll all work out from here. Um, and the building muscle thing is huge. I couldn't agree more with typically almost everyone needs quite a bit more muscle than they might think to get to the physique that they want. It is an unfortunate truth. A lot of times, like especially in lower body, I find because most women tend to hold a little bit more body fat in their lower body. It's easy to overestimate how much muscle you actually have there. When we look at like someone's goal physique pictures, it's like we actually need to build quite a lot here still. It can be surprising sometimes, but again, understanding like once you get a leaner and uncover the shape we have there, it's quite common to not have as much as we might think. If again, like in my last fat loss phase, like I thought my glutes were way bigger. Even Katie keeps telling me like your butt is way smaller now, and it's kind of disheartening, but it's just a normal part of it. Um, any final thoughts? Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
This process was really exciting for both of us, for both Janae and I. And if you if you have some sort of big like scary goal, it's always way more fun. It doesn't have to be competing. It could be a photo shoot or like just a beach vacation that you're putting a little more pressure on yourself for, something of that nature. But if it's something that scares you a little bit, it's always way more fun and exciting. So get out of your comfort zone and set some sort of goal that's scary.
I couldn't agree more though. Truly, like a photo shoot again, I think is a really good in between even. That's such a fun thing to coach people through as well. It can be a little bit like yes, intimidating, but that is, as you said, it's part of what makes it fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
taking on a new challenge, like doing something you haven't done before. That's oftentimes also like the most exciting aspect of it. That's where we grow the most. So I love it. I couldn't agree more. Now, if you want to be coached through that by Andrea, by anyone on our team, just click the link in the show notes to apply to work with us, or you can DM any of us. Happy to chat about what coaching looks like. If you enjoy the show, do us a huge favor, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Helps us grow the show so much. So that's always much appreciated. And we will catch you guys next time.